So, a very good evening, everybody. Hadn't realised we'd gone live then, didn't get my little notification up. And a very warm welcome to our Lyceum night, coming to you from Paul. As you may have seen by the change in advertising, our speakers tonight, one of them has come down very poorly at the moment, so thoughts out to them. But we have managed to reschedule that for early February. However, in the meantime, a lovely lady and a very good friend of mine and of the church here in Poole saw that this event had been postponed and said, well, what can we do? And I said, well, I don't know, let's talk about something. What should we talk about?
The weather? The weather?
The weather, yeah, don't. Yeah, let's not go there. So it's always interesting. Every year I see this within not only my church here in Poole, but with other churches. We get a lot of an influx of new people coming in. There's a lot of people come in just to investigate, to find out that little bit more. And we also see people who maybe have lapsed attending church, and it's like a New Year's resolution of starting to get back in touch with your spirituality, which is great. We love that. We absolutely love that. Any sane and a balanced approach and inquiries we always look forward to. And I do put it that way because I must share this, because it was just, at the time I was a little bit growly, but now I just look at it and think, well, I don't know. There was a comment made about our church in one of the local groups, and somebody said, well, I contacted them and the response was a bit dry. All I got was a link to the website and they didn't ask me how my chakras were. And I'm like, okay.
I wasn't expecting that one. I wasn't expecting.
I was just like, you know me, there was quite a few answers in my head originally. Yeah. But it was interesting because tonight's topic is about expectations versus the realization, you know, and what are the expectations of when we go in, when we're exploring our spirituality, you know, we'll open it up to the whole gamut. And some of the experiences and some of the things we may feel people are looking for. You're running some excellent courses online, and part of the process with you is people fill in an application form. Now, have you found people have gone a little bit stiff over that and thought, why should I have to do this?
Only because they're not used to doing that. Most courses that we see run are open access. So you just turn up on the night. The poor old tutor has no idea who they're pitching it at, what the level of experience is, and that's when things start to go wrong. But so that isn't the problem. Usually people become very gushy. They're very proud of what they've done. They're very proud of who they are, what their experience is, and they want to share that. So I probably have found the opposite. But it is really interesting how when you say to people, who are you? What do you want? What do you need? That's what makes them stop.
Yeah.
That's what halts them. Because very often they don't really know. There is this inner something in them which pulls them forward. I mean, we know initially all the reasons they go into a church. It might be bereavement. It might be because of friends pulled them along, curiosity, reconnecting with maybe a childhood religion. I've got another one here. Maybe they're searching for something. So there are lots of reasons. The problem is, how quickly do we satisfy that? And then how quickly can we move them on to something more long-term?
Yeah, that is always. And this, I'm just going to touch on something here, a personal experience. Lovely Kim Moore-Cullen. I absolutely adore Kim and her husband, Richard. They are a beautiful, wonderful, fun couple. And Kim's got this very direct way of talking. And I don't mean, you know, heavy. She's just very businesslike and very structured. And she said, so what are you looking at with your mediumship in like 3 to 5 years? And I said, well, I am working on improving my mediumship. And she said, how? And do you know what? That stopped me in my tracks. I was like, oh my God, yeah, I think I'm improving my mediumship. I know the intent is there to improve my mediumship, but I've not actually put something in place. I've not actually gone, okay, I want to improve my mediumship, so I will endeavour to do more private. I love private sittings now. When I first started doing it, I couldn't stand them. I absolutely hated them. I would never do a private sitting. I would rather jump out of the nearest window. But now, now I found the value in the private sittings, everything else apart, for my mediumship, because holding that energy for 30 minutes or more is strengthening my mediumship. But it's putting it together in that logical way in our heads, because we think we're doing things.
We think we know what we want.
Yeah. And it's not until we just have the earthy questions of how and why. And it's a really good thing to do.
Well, what I find interesting is that man, by his very nature, is a searcher. He seeks. He doesn't really know what he's seeking, and that's half the problem. And we have found this with many mediums coming to the courses that we've been holding over the last few months. There's no strategy. So if there's no strategy with people who are actively taking part, what strategy is there for people who randomly say, I fancy going into that church, or I fancy going into this service? How can we create this journey for somebody so that they realize that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end? How can we make them understand and come to realization of their own journey without it being random and doing the same old? I mean, whatever that might be, attending 3 dozen courses at a particular center, or maybe courses in a development circle or whatever, but never feeling that they've ticked the completion box and then move on. What do you think?
No, I think that's really good and valid, and I love the thing about people coming in to our churches and centres exploring. I've got this big thing, this has been going on quite a few months with me now, about the experience of the phenomena of spiritualism. I know it's a bit long-winded, but I do like words to be actually explanatory of what's going on. As the service, I will always remind the congregation, number one, you've not come here to watch us work. We can only do what we can do with your presence, because you are the important one. You are the one bringing that energy in. And just this not only engages and involves people, it just makes, I'm sad to say, not everywhere, but in a lot of cases, it's become deadened. It's like, my favorite line of, oh, thank you, Angela. That was a lovely service. Next week, we've got a really good medium,
No, the truth is out. No, I know the truth.
Yeah, and that was Angela Foster, everybody. But we've become, I don't know how to put this without causing too much of a fuss. I've always said that you do find within a lot of our churches, centres, whatever, there does tend to be either a nervousness or a fear energy there, because we don't go through seminary school. We don't go through any theological or ideological training. It's always, I'm sorry, this is something I feel really passionate about. We have these yearly AGMs, a big popularity contest, and I just think we seriously need to look at our structure and maybe evolve it. But you end up with people running churches, and God bless anybody who gives their time. I am not having a go, but it's that support system. It's to bring in that sort of like business ethos, and business, we're planning forward, we're going ahead. I mean, in our churches and centres, we've also got to acquire that business ethos about how are we going to engage with people coming in.
as you would with any business that wants customers, basically, on a very basic level.
Well, this is it. As we're all customers, and I'm sure everybody here will agree that if we go into a shop and it's underwhelming in its welcome of us, and also in the way things are presented, the knowledge about, what's that coat? Oh, that's 2.4 TOG. That's wonderful. You can do this. It's right. And just demonstrate that knowledge. We're never going to answer everybody's questions because, as I say, my example earlier on about never ask me how my chakras were. Well, actually, do you know what, love? I'm never going to ask you that. So, seriously.
It sounds a bit personal to me, to be honest.
Yeah, it's really not there.
You're a good psychic. You ought to know that. But it is interesting, isn't it, how people will come with an expectation that also is very limiting. I mean, we know that, unfortunately, with spiritualism, that the main window they come for is the demonstration.
Yeah.
And if you try and feed in even a traditional divine service, which is very much linked to the traditional mainstream religions that they probably would have come from, they either say, oh, no, excuse me, I'm not going back there again, or this is too stuffy, or this is not where I want to be. I want a good demonstration of mediumship. Make sure it's about me. The problem is, how do we feed this need that actually helps people to understand the fullness of spiritualism, what spiritualism really means, that we're connecting with our spirit, and that it can be as little and as much as they want, but not just within the confines of giving a demonstration of mediumship, because it's the implication of what that demonstration means, that life continues, not just that they're hearing from their auntie.
Yeah, and that's very true. And we do get it. People will come in and ask questions, which is great, because I always encourage you. So, any questions after service, please ask them. My old mantra, no question is daft if you don't know the answer. And nobody ever got up on a platform without asking questions. So, carry on. One thing I'll put my heart on my sleeve here is sometimes when people have come in with like this fixed idea, which is a conglomeration of just Facebook memes and posts, and I sometimes have to go, right, where do I start with this torrid mess that you've created? How do I encourage those first steps? How do I sort of introduce the idea of it's not this world transpose onto the next world? We're talking about a totally different existence, a totally different understanding, and that can cause some challenges at times with as I say, when you get the questions and you just have to sort of like chip away at the stuff that's been put upon it and just try and get to the core beliefs, the core truth, and then build from there.
Absolutely.
But it's very interesting that we're talking about this subject tonight, actually, because the more we're talking about it, the more it is actually making sense, and things are coming up in my brain and going, yeah, it is what is the realizations that we offer, and sometimes how those realizations are put across in the way they're demonstrated or spoken or written or whatever are understood. And how sometimes that can disbar some people because, well, that's not what I've heard, so I'm not interested.
Yeah.
The bloke's crazy. He's talking about.
Oh, it's religion again. Oh, it's just another form of just religion again.
Yeah.
As soon as they hear the word that, then that really, we thought this was different. We thought this was something greater than just, because the concept of religion has been so confining for so many people.
Yeah.
Over the years.
And I have found myself just unconsciously using the philosophy of spiritualism and saying that rather than the religion of.
I like that. I mean, that's what the reality that shows. It's living the life rather than just being exposed to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little comment here from Teresa Bird. Hello, darling. Dialectic helps get to the truth. Socratic questioning.
Yeah.
I'm sure you will
make
explain
you
that
answer
to me.
the question. Well, I think I understand her, if I'm right, because I did do a little bit on this, but basically it's asking a question that makes you answer it yourself. So it's
Yeah.
throwing the question back to you and saying, and I actually, she's very interesting that she's picked this up, because I was just about to say, even conversations between you and I like this helps me to further my understanding. I've always said that this is the best way to explore your own understanding is by being involved in a discussion group. So that follows on beautifully from what Teresa is saying, that you have to explore your own understanding and not be given it by somebody else, because secondhand, it will never work for you. You'll never believe it. Hopefully that's what she meant by that. Otherwise, I've got to go and get the doctor.
Yes.
Yeah, good. They're just studying on that particular. Well done. I'm glad I studied that. Came up. You see, it always does. Nothing is ever lost. It's always just packed away in a little box. Be brought out on Sundays.
I have never heard it referred to like that. However, I am a big believer in answering a question with a question. Yeah. Where do we go from here? Well, do you believe that everything you've ever experienced, the first time you held your child, the look in your partner's face when you were married, do you believe that goes nowhere? Just to sort of like expand and make people think. Because the thing is, human, and I'm going to call it a frailty. Human frailty is we want the answer and we want it now.
Yes. But, very, very pointed. Yes.
Yeah. You and I are over 21. And have we found the answer yet?
No.
No.
And interestingly, talking about answering the question, we often get Mormons visiting around us and Seventh-day Adventists. They are brilliant at those sort of questions. They never answer the question. They will always throw it back to you as another question. And that can actually be quite uncomfortable because, as you said, people always want answers. They don't want another question.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with just yet another question? Well, what do you think about it? Well, I don't know. That's what it's like when the doctor says, well, what do you think's wrong with you?
Yeah, well, I've looked it up and it's either berry, jungle fever, or...
Yes, our doctor used to say he was a
radiation poisoning.
What's the matter with you? Well, that's what I'm here for, doctor. The nonsense and just get to the diagnosis.
Yeah. And it is getting that over to people. Everyone's answer is going to be different. Everyone's answer is continually evolving. Everybody's answer is based on their journey and their experience. My journey and your journey are different, totally different. Okay, we have the commonality links, but apart from that, totally different.
Totally
different aspects of your life, bring in different thoughts and different lessons, different aspects of my life, do the same for me. And it's with people, because something we have found since 2020, that the online vision of spiritualism, again, everything is a double-edged sword. We've got to have the balance. We are seeing some wonderful things, nights such as this, where we can have an open discussion. People can join in with the debate and talk about things. Also, we are seeing things and just think, not sure about that.
Yeah, we have to discriminate. We really do, and more so. Yeah, we have to discriminate. But it's interesting you're talking about online, because what has happened in practice is that there's been this great opening up of working online because of COVID. We're now seeing this pulling back.
Yep.
So what's happening to all those people that were so keen to work online, to be present online? Was it a 7-moment episode in their lives that they've now got over? Because actually there have been some really interesting studies done for about the last 15 years by an American professor called Heidi Campbell. And I found out about her in about 2015 when I wrote about the history of the online branch of the Spiritual Sessional Union, the DSNU, the first 8 years, to find out why religion online had taken off so well and why it worked. And she had done a lot of work in the States on this and found that, in fact, it was the larger established churches and the evangelical churches who were exploring online connections, that were actually bringing in new congregations who weren't presenting at the church on a Sunday morning.
Mm.
They needed and wanted something. They were searching for it. There was no doubt about it. And they were finding it. But it was not sufficient for then these churches to stand still and absolutely just present them with the same old, same old. They had to evolve just the same way that on in-person churches had to evolve. What's happened to all those people that showed that initial interest? That's what I would like to know. Have any met? I doubt it.
That is a really interesting question. There was a wonderful talk by Jean Bassett in, I believe it's 2001 at Brighton Church. And she was talking about the days when spiritualism would fill the Albert Hall.
Yeah.
They would have demonstrations of what we term as evidential mediumship, but the rest of the time it was engaging in conversation, engaging with debate, engaging in talks and lectures and things like that. And she asked the very same question. She said, where are these people today? Where are they now? And you didn't see the congregation that she was talking to, but obviously, because she said, you can see by the very low turnout today. So obviously a handful of people there to listen. Had Jean been putting on a demonstration of mediumship that morning, no doubt the story would have been totally different.
Yes, I'm afraid so.
So have we stopped giving people things to listen to? Is the question. That came to my mind when I heard her say that, when I watched this tape, and I was just blown away by it. And I just wonder, have we stopped giving people something worthwhile listening to?
The problem is, are we giving them what we think they need? And are they taking what they think they need? And in fact, we're like two sides of a train line going in opposite directions.
Yeah.
With this gap of misunderstanding somewhere in the middle. You know, we know what we want to give as the provider. And we're also the receiver. We're also the recipient on the other side. So it's not as if we're doing one or that. We have experience of going into churches. We have experience of the community that we feel comfortable in. We have experiences of feeling alienated by a poor reception. I mean, you talked about one the other day where you went to a church and the reception was dire. They didn't even offer you a drink.
Yeah.
You know? So why are we doing this all the time? How can we make sure that we do that?
Yeah. And it's fascinating because in that very same talk, and if anybody ever wants to listen to it, just go on Brighton and Hove's Spiritualist Facebook page, videos, and watch it, because this is one of those seminal points in our philosophy that no matter when you hear this, it's applicable to the world today.
Yeah.
And that's what I love in philosophy. I've been reading books by Stanton Moses, 1876, and he's talking about the world outside the door today, and I love it. But in that same talk by Jean Bassett, and when she carried on from that question of where are they now, she said, we here in our churches, people come in and they want a workshop, so we give them a workshop, and we give them the coloured ribbons, and we give them the coloured pencils, and we sit them there and tell them how good they're doing. But she said, we're not actually progressing the soul.
No, we're not.
We're just placating the active mind, and we're not engaging with the spirituality and the divinity in people. I just sat there.
Within people. That's interesting that you've talked about that. The divinity within people. We're not talking about a third-party divinity here, which you have to access. You're actually talking about the divinity which is our birthright within each and every one of us.
Exactly. And I say to people, listen, I don't care what you believe in. You can believe that the universe is run by a giant tree frog, as long as you believe in something.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. Find what you believe in.
Yeah.
It's a lazy energy going, oh, there is no God, there is no creative force. And then we walk through a park surrounded by nature, or we come into a spiritualist meeting and we hear substantial evidence, yet we're still, denial ain't just a river, honey. It's as simple as that. The evidence for a creative force behind everything is everywhere we look. See my cat.
Well, it's like you walk down a street and all you walk down any high street and all you see are people dressed in whatever they're dressed in. You don't actually look beneath that and see a spark or a flame or a soul. You just see them as that beggar doesn't look too nice, or that's a horrible young teenager who's probably going to go and rob a bank when he's older, or there's another kid that hasn't gone to school today. You make judgments about people, and unfortunately what's happening when people come to church, they come with that judgment. They come with that, this is what I expect to find from you, and if you don't provide it, I'm off.
Yeah, that's very true. And I'm sure you've had this as evidential mediums. You can sit there and probably bring through the greatest amount of evidence you've ever done. You've just sat there and in the back of your mind, you're going, wow. And then you get the sister turn around and go, yeah, but that's not who I wanted to hear from.
Yes. Yes.
I don't care.
Excuse me, you've really not understood this dynamic. Nobody's told you the rules. Well, don't start me on the role of the recipient and how recipients and congregations need training, because there's a whole workshop in that one alone. We could do that one in the near future. But you're absolutely right. There's this mismatch. There is this total mismatch. You know what you're providing. You know you're providing a community. You understand that so strongly. You know you want to meet needs. I mean, you were talking to me before about how this pushing of the community bounds might include a coffee shop when you get your local great running past the door. You don't know how you're going to switch somebody's little light on inside them. You don't know what that action will be. But unless we create that environment beyond the demonstration, we are never going to switch that little light on. It's not going to happen. It can't. The food is like a packet of crisps. It's not a 3-course. Oh, there you are. It's a packet of crisps, not a 3-course meal.
So you got Rish Adam asking, what does community mean?
Okay, it's whatever is. Oh, it's so dynamic, isn't it? Community. I mean, it depends on what levels you want to address their needs. What do you think? I mean, for you, community is quite obvious. It's creating a family environment where people feel needed and wanted.
Yeah. To me, here at Poole, we've created this dynamic. People that watch our online services often hear me say, the chatter before the service is brilliant. People come in, they sit, they talk. We don't know these people, their outside lives are. We don't know if that time is the only time they actually feel confident, safe enough to sit there and converse with strangers who then become friends. And then you expand that community energy into the local community. A lot of our fundraising projects are for local-based other communities that service other sectors of the greater community, the greater area. We do quite a lot of work with places like the Veterans Hub, and we've worked with the Veterans Forge.
Look what you did for Christmas Day. Look what you did for Christmas Day.
Yeah, I just spent Christmas Day running up and downstairs with pans of boiling turkey.
I'm sure people receiving the turkey didn't think of it quite like that.
But yeah, it's always a fine balancing act as well, because I always say that if you try and be everything to everybody, you actually end up being nothing. Yeah.
But the thing is, you've seen how the energy which you create, that buzz, is as good, or if not a million times better than any piece of music you might have on where nobody communicates, and that you just have this music blaring out in the beginning to expect it to raise an energy. You've seen how that creates the battery for the service and all the elements of it, haven't you? Yeah,
very true.
Yes, you're right.
And again, with the reputation, not only Poole, there's some lovely ones up I love Cole Darwin up north. Just something about that church. I need to go and work there one day. It's on my bucket list because I just think the energy comes out of that place is awesome. But it's also within the wider community of the area that you get known. And although you may not have an instant hit, oh, there's a spiritualist church, I'll go and have a look. It gets acknowledged. Yeah. There was one chat bloke, and he's such a nice guy, and he does a lot for others. He's a real, I don't know how to describe him really. First time you meet him, you just think, you're a bit dodgy. But actually, when you get to know
not mentioning names, are you?
I've got no. But when you get to know him, he really is one of nature's real gents, because he's got this roughy, toughy exterior, but underneath he would do anything for anybody. You're
not talking about yourself, are you?
No, God, no. I am dodgy. But he, I was talking to him in another community event unassociated with the church. And he went, oh, yeah, you run that funny church, don't you? Yeah, I don't believe in any of that. Yeah, a load of rubbish. I said, that's fine. Absolutely fine. Just left it. I'm not going to see that as a challenge where I've got to raise myself and bite back. But 2 years later, knock at the door. Can you come around my house? Because I'm having problems. And I said, but this is a load of rubbish, mate.
Just said he was next.
Like, oh, here.
Yeah. It's like the prayer, isn't it? When you just before you pop your clogs and you think, well, okay, I'll just reopen all those channels of communication which I closed down about 90 years ago, just in case there's something in it. Just in case, I will start praying like mad because it now seems important.
That's interesting, because this tails back to what you were saying about the decline in a way of some of the online things, because in 2020 our very mortality was challenged.
Yes, it was.
I always said I've never seen so many people holding hands.
Yes, you're right.
It was noticeable. Yeah, because it made people think, what would you do if I'm not here? What would I do if you're not here? So it really struck people on a very primal level. One of the, I'd always say we're like onions. We've got a lot of frippery and niceties and things. But if we peel everybody down, we've all got the same basic core instincts. And our mortality is one of them. It's one of those things. Our society nowadays doesn't support thoughts of mortality. You go back 40, 50 years and you would have had the old dear around the road who's do hatch, match and dispatch. If somebody passed in the family, she would be the one to come out, lay them out in the front parlour. The curtains would be drawn. Everybody would know. Everybody would go in and see.
Yeah, my gran was like that. My gran was laid out like that. I remember it.
Yeah.
My granddad, my granddad, I think. Yeah,
but we've over the years we've become unaligned with that, because God bless them, the hospitals and nurses, the work they do is just phenomenal. But it's that barrier for us, that we know that we can go and see them. A lot of us will take the opportunity to be there as long as possible to make sure we are there for that final time. But a lot of people don't have that. So we've lost that contact with our own mortality. Yeah. And as I say, the 2020 suddenly brought that back. I mean, I don't know what other people were doing. I'm probably going to make a right idiot of myself here. But I was thinking, well, if it gets really bad, there's a lot of ocean liners out in Poole Bay here. I can row out to one of them and I can go and live on one of them, while civilization is collapsing around me and the streets are piled high with bodies or whatever. Because we were just faced with the unknown.
Well, I remember every time my husband went out, because at the time they didn't think asthmatics should be with the general public. They now realise we actually had a better, stronger immune system than most. But at the time, so he used to go and do the shopping, and I felt like I was sending him to war. I was honestly terrified. And my generation, that's the first time in my generation that I felt like that. I mean, we had wars in other countries, but it was the first time when we had we had an enemy we couldn't see.
Yeah.
An enemy we couldn't see. But that did affect people's, that could have been what brought, actually never thought about that. That could have been the catalyst that brought people back to some sort of religious practice. I really hadn't connected the two quite like that. There's no...
All religions had an upsurge.
Okay.
All religions, regardless.
Was that because they felt they were coming together as a community, or because they were facing their own mortality?
I think the initial concept was the mortality side.
Right.
But then when they walked into places and then found a community, that's where people stuck. I mean, I was very, very fortunate here that I had the support of wonderful volunteers who wanted their church open. I wanted the church open. So the minute we could, we did. And I do realise and I do sympathise that wasn't available to a lot of our churches and centres. So I'm not knocking anybody. But because we did, we, even with the bizarre spacing and all the rules that we did follow, we were always full. And we never turned anybody away. And I just marvelled at that every time, because we went from the 2 metre apart, and I'm there with my 2 metre stick and measuring out bloody chairs and things like that. And we were full. And then we could reduce that, and we were full. And then we reduced it a bit more, and we were full. But we never turned anybody away. And I just thought, this is incredible. This is absolutely incredible.
And how many of those people do you think have still stayed with you? How many have gone on to be part of the new post-COVID community?
Good question. 30 to 40%.
That's very... I bet there are many churches in this country would like those sort of figures.
Yeah.
So it goes back to the original question, really. What are you providing? Some sort of normality. Absolutely, going to church. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, this is what we did before. This is what we do on a Sunday morning. Get out the best hat, brush off the clothes. Yeah, absolutely.
And I was fortunate. I didn't have a plan. I just went with guts instincts. But when we did reopen, I knew things had to change. So, I mean, we were forced to change some aspects. Like the service was cut down to an hour instead of the standard hour and 20 minutes. Just to reduce the amount of time people were indoors, but still sate the actual needs of the people. But then that led on to, we had this discussion this morning about timings on things. And I just said, you do philosophy, I do the healing, you do the evidential mediumship. If you do 50 minutes on the philosophy and 5 minutes on the mediumship, or 5 minutes on the philosophy and 45 minutes on the mediumship, I don't care, because it's spirit-led.
I think that's lovely. I think that's lovely because, we're holding a chairing workshop tomorrow, and I will add that to one of the slides, because that idea of, as long as it's agreed that everybody knows what's happening before the event, then, but can we take the congregation along with a 50-minute philosophy?
This is where I did have an advantage, because I had a new congregation come in. Totally new. There was no, I wasn't battling, and I do mean battling sometimes, I wasn't battling the old structure.
Yes.
We never used to do that. I did have, there was a few people who I had to have a conversation with of going, this is the way things are going, we'd love you on the journey, but if it's really not doable for you, I fully understand. But please don't ask me to trade off. Please don't ask me to stop doing the philosophy and then you'll come. It's like, that's not going to happen.
Did you actually have to have this conversation out loud with people, or was this inferred?
No, that was actual conversations. But we took it forward and it evolved. And it's interesting. I know a lot of people look to Paul Church for ideas, and I love it. And I love the language things that I've been doing. This thing about evidential mediumship, I know it's really irritating to some people, But I just smile wryly now when I see posts coming up with an evening of evidential mediumship here or there. And I just think that's really, I think that's healthy.
Yeah.
That we're actually saying to people who are coming in, because again, getting back to our topic, expectations, word medium. Oh, up on the platform, got your mother here. No, we're all mediums. Oh, you mean I could be up on the platform giving messages? No. And this is where the conversation starts getting a bit complex, because we need to get that side over, that the awareness of the spirit world will facilitate an aspect of your mediumship. And
do you know what I find extraordinary is when, and I remember seeing this in student setups, in student services, where there'd be 2 or 3 different addresses given as part of the evening. And although those mediums hadn't come together, all the addresses followed a pattern, followed a theme. Now, you tell me there isn't some intelligence going on there.
Oh, yeah, always. The classic example of a live in, no, actually, I won't, not just live, virtual as well. Because when we were shut, we were doing quite a lot of services on Zoom, and I had a lovely couple who used to live down here, and they were my co-hosts. And I would create a playlist on YouTube, share that to them. They would use that as the playlist for the service. And it was just getting to the point of hysterics that the medium would deliver this address, and the song that came on fitted it to a T.
Yeah, even
it was just like, oh my God, you've done it again. How do you do this? I was like, I don't, it's them.
And people forget that although and this is why I'm so keen partly to make sure that any mediums that I'm involved in the teaching of tell the story. They don't just do a scattergun approach of information, because that is the most boring thing for anybody to listen to. The recipient as well as the rest of the congregation. You have to get involved in stories, and that helps with the energy. But also about this other thing that we have to understand. Where was I going with this? Carry on, I'll come back to it. It's gone. I must write these things down. I'm getting to an age. But understanding that the philosophy is there for everyone. It's not just for the recipient. And the philosophy will touch everybody's heart. And if we acknowledge that, I remember some of the best addresses, probably growing up, were not the Catholic ones, a very senior moment, senior junior moment, was not necessarily the Catholic addresses that I listened to, but possibly the Baptists and the Methodists, who are really trained to give an address. And those were really gripping.
Yeah.
So I feel the skill in giving often an address can often far outweigh the skill of a good medium giving evidential mediumship.
Very much.
We take that for granted. We take it for granted that we're going to be bored or not listen to or switch off because it's philosophy.
Yeah.
But it can really, if it's done with the right intent, it can be uplifting, it can be inspirational, it can give you something to walk out with and think, I hadn't thought about it like that. But that's only if the medium pays as much respect to the development of their philosophy address as they do to their mediumship. And unfortunately, that's often the problem. The philosophy is a side thing that's just added on, and not much intent is given to it by the medium delivering it. Have you not found?
Yeah, very much. I'm just going to quickly put the energies back a bit here, because Teresa's just said something, and I love that. When we were talking about the churches reopening, that's a very primal thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Despite the consequences of passing germs and passing COVID on.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very
prime,
we went to our primal urges, and we haven't been in touch with them for a very long time, or we've just put them into abeyance. But we all share these primal urges, and very interestingly too, I always say that the psychic network opened up because we were having conversations with people on the other side of the world about stuff that we were talking about today, and it's like, how's this working? This is really interesting. But that leads me on to when we talk about the philosophy and the unfoldment, and this is something I always try to get over to people when they start on their spiritual pathway. I can't turn you into a medium. I can't develop you, but I'll be here to help you unfold. And the more you are unfold, the more you become aware. And then you can start picking up on the subtleties. Because, when we walk in green off of the street and sit down, we need a very precise and conclusive communication to make us sit up and think.
Yes.
I did a private sit-in today, and I had that. I knew I had to dot the I's and cross the T's, which is fine. Makes me work harder. I like that. But then, as we become more into the understanding of it, we start to acquire knowledge and experience. And I can't understate the quality when I talk about experience. If people say to you, "Oh, what goes on in your church?" and you tell them, it's like, that sounds a bit dull. But if you actually experience it, if you go in and you sit there and you feel that presence, you feel that energy, you see the smiles, you get the conversation with somebody who's sat there, has never spoken to you in their life, but they just want to say hi and whatever. And it's getting that over to people, because the more you immerse yourself in the experience of the phenomena of the philosophy of spiritualism, the more that you will pick up on the subtlety. And it's the subtleties of the things where we get our greatest message. We just have somebody can just say one key phrase or one sentence, and it's not making things fit. You just go, bang on.
But this is all about relationships, isn't it? Whether it's relationships with people in the spirit world who've gone far past, or relationships with our friends and our family here. It's acceptance of the individual, of our individuality and the individuality of other people. And it's acknowledging their right to be individuals and to have their own individual understanding. And I always remember and I'm sure I've said this to you before, my mother was a convert Catholic. My dad was the Catholic, born and bred. Whenever Mum was out at church, and his belief really sort of faded in latter years. Although he at one time trained to be a Catholic priest. So, he'd been through and decided this wasn't where he needed to be, though he never found an alternative. I would have loved to have had these discussions with him, I must admit. But Mum would go out working for Knights and Columba, and Dad would say, "Oh, she's proselytizing again." Is that the right word? I'm sure he said it right. But basically, she was going out spreading the word, as converts often do. I mean, converts are the greatest carrier of a message of their own religious beliefs, far more than those born into religious practice. There's no doubt about that. And in fact, because spiritualism isn't, interestingly, you could pick up on that. If spiritualism isn't the religion of birth for most people, but it's a religious or belief system that they come to, you'd think they'd be the greatest proselytizers.
Yeah.
And want to spread the word, a bit like Conan Doyle,
Yeah.
He was a great spin doctor for the spiritualist church in the early days, and yet his background wasn't anything to do with that. So how can we excite that flame inside people to say they want to share as well as to absorb?
Yeah, because we do live, I know, because I've had these conversations with people in the past. And it's sort of like the question you put out to everybody. How many people are quite happy to say out loud, out proud, wherever you are, I am a spiritualist?
Yeah, coming out.
Yeah. I found it easier to say I'm gay than a spiritualist, to be quite honest.
No, I've always said there's only three types of people in the world. There's Catholics, lapsed Catholics, and non-Catholics. But apparently the Muslims say the same thing.
Just going back on the address topic here. Yeah. Roy McKay, local medium to us, lovely guy who was in yesterday. And again, this is the subtlety. Every time Roy pops down here for a coffee, somebody else will walk into the church asking questions. It's not planned. It's not rehearsed. Poor bugger comes in here, just sits down, has a cup of coffee, the door open, and somebody will come in asking, questions and things. So Roy is sort of like my wingman now on answering
Open
questions.
door. I mean, I think that's amazing. How many churches do you go into and they're either locked or the vicar's never there or the priest is never there?
So thank you, Roy. The dresses are like the loaves and fishes. Everyone gets something. Very true.
Yes.
Reverend Ashley Oliver, who was with us all through December, talking about the Advent, the significance of the Advent Sundays as the opening to our services in December. Absolutely beautiful. And Ashley is this just natural storyteller. When she starts, that sounds wrong when she starts, but she can tell this story and you just sit there transfixed and you're like,
she's kissed the Blarney Stone, probably like me. That does make a difference.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, you're just like, oh, where is this going? I want to know more. And full spiritualist address is a thing of power and marvelous. I love it. The highlight of the service for me. And it is true because I say to people about the evidential side of our work. And I ask people this question: how much evidence do you want before you actually start putting this into practice?
Yeah. Or the same evidence again and again and again and again, because it's very often,
lovely. Rish, everything is interlinked and has a purpose, so it may not be understood at the time. Very true.
That's a bit like having a jigsaw puzzle, isn't it? And you've got all the pieces there, but they don't actually make a picture till you start putting them together.
Exactly. And it may not be today's picture, but tomorrow it fits.
Yeah, absolutely.
Reverend Ashley, again, learning and growing in our understanding of our own personal spiritual philosophy means that we can grow in our discernment.
Yeah.
So then when we are part of a service, we have an understanding of what is said and discussed on a deeper level. Very true.
Yeah.
I always know when our demonstrators are talking to the soul of the person. And it does happen, thankfully, time and time again. I'll look out across the congregation. At least half of them are sat there with their eyes shut. And that doesn't mean they're asleep. They are sat there with their eyes shut and taking that in.
Without distraction. Yeah.
Exactly. They're not like looking at the window.
Or lighting up a cigarette, which my mother nearly did during Catholic service.
Good for her.
She got cigarettes out and just stopped herself lighting the cigarette. Yeah, she was a bit of an odd one.
Oh, well, look at Teresa Bird's just come out of the closet. Well done, love.
I'm hoping this isn't being seen on my personal Facebook page. Otherwise, my cousins are going to go, oh my goodness, we always knew she was a bit odd. What would her father say?
Yeah.
He's quite chuffed with me because he keeps sending me that through the message. Oh, I shouldn't be sending you that.
But it is true, it's when people either are returning, we're seeing quite a lot of that at the moment. There's people that we haven't seen for quite a while, sort of like the New Year's resolutions have kicked in. Please, I'm not being demeaning about that. It's absolutely fine. I always say
there is a seasonal element to religious belief and practice. Yeah. There is definitely a seasonal element. Yeah.
It is lovely when people say, oh, I'm sorry I haven't been here for so long. But I always respond because I mean this. It doesn't matter. The church is always here.
Yeah.
And what we talk about is life and living life and getting the most out of life. And in my book, that doesn't mean chaining yourself down to being at a church every Sunday, whether you want to or not. You come when you need.
It's also very personal. It's also inside you. You take it wherever you go. So that's the other thing. There could have been this enormous growth that's made, and they've come back to reconcile it, to consolidate it, to make sense of it within an environment of like-minded people. That's the only thing I ever wanted when I came back into the religious structure was I want to find somewhere safe. That was the only thing I asked. I didn't put any other conditions on it. Just find me somewhere safe. And that was my only condition.
Yeah.
Don't do anything that's going to prejudice my family. I'm not going to suddenly become and none and leave my family to their own devices, or leave my darling husband after 45 years. There will be caveats on what I want to believe and how I want to follow whatever Spirit has felt might help me develop. But I do believe, and I was talking to you about this morning, and I think I was talking to my husband about it, there is free will, free won't, free can't, free shan't. So although we may be given opportunities to follow, it is our choice whether or not we take them up. But I did say I'm not going to do anything that's going to compromise my family environment, and I want somewhere safe. And to be honest, they're not bad starting points for anybody.
Yeah, that's very true. And going back on this, when people say, I'm sorry I haven't been here so long, I do have that thought in the back of my head that you were coming in here for whatever duration.
Yeah.
You obviously either didn't find something, or you more than likely did find something that you've taken away because that suited the need at the time. But now you've sort of like worked through that and got a handle on things. But now maybe life's thrown in another curveball, and it's sort of like, well, they helped me the last time, so
touching base.
Yeah.
Touching base. Yes.
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating. But I think one of the biggest things we need to offer for the expectation side is the continuity.
Yes. The safe place is always there.
Yeah. Yes. And actually, the word safe has triggered a bit of an outpouring here. So, Rish, I'd like to explore the word safe with love.
Yes, absolutely.
Teresa Bird, that's great. Safe is good.
Yeah.
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 But yeah, and that's part and parcel of the continuity, that you know what you're going to get. We are all consumers, so we've all probably had this experience of our favorite restaurant or takeaway. We always use that because food's really good, and then we go there and we have the duff meal.
Yes.
Then we go, and it really impacts us, doesn't it? And it's enough to stop us. You know, we're going to be straight onto Google. I went there. I've been going for 30 years. It really impacts on people when, you know, and we do need to evolve. We do need to bring change in. We do need to try different things. I will do different types of service with different seating arrangements as my current thing. And people come in and you got a couple go, oh,
my chair's gone. Where's my chair?
No. You know what? I'm sorry. I'm going to let this out. I do move the chairs to discourage. I have seen it in other places. I was talking to somebody, they were working somewhere not far from here. And I'd said about this energy of these people who only come in when they deign to come in. So they probably only come in once every 5 weeks, but they've got their chair. And this person who's from abroad going, no, that doesn't happen. Well, bugger me. It happened right in front of them on the platform. There's some lady just sat in a chair, and two people came up to them and went, we always sit here. Yeah, it's a bit like working with Sheldon. Yeah, that's my spot. And it's just like, do you know what? I find that quite a destructive energy in a church.
I was recalling my youth. You know, when you get to a certain age, you start looking back more than you don't look forward. It's too scary. So you start looking back. So I grew up in a very strong Catholic community in the Midlands. And part of the local school and part of the sponsorship of the church was by a very predominant local family who had been there for generations. And I remember every Christmas for the midnight mass, the front 2 rows would be reserved for this family. So we'd all turn up there about 10:30, you know, usually the men from when the pubs closed, to get a seat, because for midnight mass, the church would be absolutely packed out. And they would then march down the aisle at about 5 to midnight and take over these 2 seats. And I remember quite clearly that one of the younger members of the family, one of the male members of the family, had this very giggly girlfriend who obviously hadn't been to church for years. And she just thought she was riding on this popularity contest of, I'm part of the local family, and therefore I'm going to get one of the best seats. And that image, and I wasn't very old, I'd have been in my teens, that image has never left me about this attitude of that's mine, I own it, I possess it. Unfortunately, religion and life isn't like that. It's not static. It really isn't static.
And it's to say, just a quick hello to the lovely Craig Morris, who's joining us from Sweden, I believe, tonight. Good evening, Craig. I know it was minus 24 out there last week, so I hope you're having fun.
Frederick said it was minus 20 where he was yesterday, and I'm thinking, well, that's a bit cold.
Yeah, that's a bit chilly.
Not friendly. Yeah.
But again, going back to this, the continuity, but having in mind that we don't become stuck in a mire with continuity.
Yes.
We have the continuity of the place is always clean, it's well lit, it's welcoming. People know that the demonstration safe. Yeah. Actually, yes. And that's something that's just resurfaced after 2 years, where I had to act under the safeguarding.
Right.
There was an issue with somebody who we had to resolve.
Okay.
And funny enough, that's just popped up just of late. But again, and it's taking those duties seriously.
Yes.
All right, my character, I'm quite out there and gregarious and whatever. Actually, I'm quite a quiet and shy person, but when I'm on my stake, I am.
I know. Well, I know. I've seen that side of you.
But the church means everything to me, and I'm not frightened of. We enjoy the good times, which is wonderful. But not every lesson comes wrapped in bows and with puppies. And when there is an action needed, I'm not frightened to take that action. And the committee that I have are the same. And the trustees that are coming in when we switch over to the charity status are the same, because we realise that you do have a duty of care to everybody coming in.
Yes, in fact, that sums up so much of what we've been talking about tonight, duty of care.
And this is part of this safe environment. We had concerns about somebody who came to the church with injuries, and I and one of the healers just had this conversation. Are you in a safe place? And when it all came out, she laughed. She thought, "Oh God, no, nothing like that." She said, "My God, you're the only person who's actually ever asked me that."
Yeah.
And I just thought, well, yeah, because this is part of, when you run these places, whether it be the virtual arena or the in-house arena, but it's providing that continuity, however, not being afraid of bringing in new ideas, new formats, new seating arrangements. The new platform I've got planned is just going to be mega. I need another £8,400 and I've got it, but never mind. It will come.
We're going to get the 32p. It's very important.
32p, yeah. And I think, in a lot of areas we do succeed. I'm not saying we're perfect. I'm not saying we're the role model for people, because, as I say, there are a lot of places out there that I see that do just amazing things. They do food banks like every week. Everybody does their bit in their way. And when we come into that energy of looking after others, I think, we're pretty much going to be on the right path with there, because it just shows where our energies are.
There is one word which sums this up completely and utterly, and this is mutual respect.
Yeah. Yeah. And remembering mutual respect actually goes both ways.
Exactly.
It's not something you demand without just demonstrating it.
Yes. Rather than the two people, it has to be give and take.
Some people find a bit of a difficult concept.
Yeah. And it's a give and take, and it's contributing as you want to. There's payback, understanding that what you receive, you can pay back in other ways. It's this spider's web, really, of attitude and connection that, one little ripple will have an effect on somebody else, and then they move it on to, and yes, it's if done properly and with the right intent, and no doubt the backing of spirit, it's a beautiful thing to see grow and develop. It has to grow. Why would we want anything that's not so beautiful and rich and and has such promise and such potential, why would we want to starve it of the very nutrition, which is the people that feed it? Oh, that's a bit deep, isn't it?
Oh, hello. Your trance was kicking in.
But if I get the visualization first, I'm terrible about it. I'm very visual, so I have to get the visualization. I just saw this spider's web and then nutrition. So yes, yeah.
But all this is accessible in the philosophy of spiritualism.
That's the nutrition.
Yeah. We have access to all these higher learnings. We have access to all these different thoughts of this. I've heard trance addresses and just thought, I can't go along with this. And I've heard other trance addresses where I just sat there with tears rolling down my eyes because it just touched me on such a level. Yeah. But it does reiterate this thing that, where we're all searching for the answer, the spirit world haven't got the answer. They are still on this progressive unfoldment journey of understanding, which I find that very encouraging. That I know that they're not holding back on me for any reason. It's because maybe they haven't got to that point yet, or they've got different views on the subject, or they've got different philosophies. Because I never hear the spirit world saying, you've got to do this.
No.
Or you mustn't do that.
Didactic conversations, yeah.
Yeah. Have you considered the implications of this?
It's a bit like when you think about the highest number in the world, when you try and explain that to a child. They say, what's the biggest number in the world? And then you say, and then add 1. And then add 1. And basically that's what knowledge and understanding is all about. You get to that point and then you add 1, and then you add another 1. And it's a bit like the universe expanding. Our knowledge base, our understanding base just begins to expand, and there's always potential. There's always potential for that extra add 1.
Yeah. And then it's how we translate that into what the realization is for people coming in. Number one,
you need that whiskey, you need that brandy, and
I'm gonna have a snowball. Snowball.
That's gonna lick the cream first. Yeah, I know.
But yeah, that's really interesting, because I do sometimes. It's probably easier if I think this person's not ready for that yet than actually thinking about the other side of it and going, have I gone in too high and too heavy-handed?
Yeah.
So that's interesting. That's that's going to sit there.
And then you end up saying to yourself, if I know what it is, what would it be? And I always think that when I'm having that difficult conversation with someone, whether it's the kids or trying to explain my belief, I always... Okay, as the children were growing up, my husband, I would be the front man, my husband would be the one behind the scenes, and I would always turn around to him and say, what would you like to add to this conversation? And the kids have always said, you'd always look at Dad and go, what would you like to add to? And Dad's going there stum, nothing. You deal with it. But it's a bit like that with the spirit world, isn't it? When you get engaged with those difficult conversations, you sort of look at each other and, what would you like to add to this conversation? Thinking, goodness sake, help me out of this hole. I'm not doing very well. And it's amazing how if you are tuned in, they'll drip that word into you, and you suddenly think, wow, that's an avenue I could explore.
And so often it's so simple.
Yeah.
And we've taught time and time again not to overcomplicate things. And as part of our human condition, we tend to. And then I was sat once for physical mediumship, and I was getting very frustrated because I couldn't do the visualizations that we were being encouraged to. But unfortunately, where I was getting frustrated with not being able to do the visualizations, there was some phenomena going on. And it was sort of like, okay, so I've got to get ratty with the spirit world to make something happen. Apparently, I was right.
And it was, but you were looking in the opposite direction. Yeah, that's a common fault.
Yeah.
Looking for the Milky, not the Milky Way, the other one. The rainbow ones. What's it called? Come on, another senior moment. When we go to Norway to have Northern Lights, it's like we did, look out for the Northern Lights, but was looking the wrong direction. So we were looking west when they were coming east. So it's a bit like that in the spirit world, isn't it? Like, what's happening? Oh, it's over there.
But when I was sitting with it, I sat with them and I went, this is just really getting frustrating now, because the visualization we had was going down and down these stairs. You get to a corridor and there was a door. I would go down and down the stairs, get to the corridor, and there would be no bloody door. And that was where I was getting frustrated. But that was when things happened. And I'm like, "Argh!" And I said, why am I not getting into this? And they went, you're too nosy. And it was and do you know what? I didn't even question it. I just went, you are, you know, you have just said that defining truth that I cannot disagree or argue with.
Yeah,
because
I'm the same, far too nosy. But that's because we're visual learners. And that may be because of our neurodiversity, which is a really interesting topic.
Yeah.
That's another one for another night.
Yeah, listen up, folks. There's something in the pipeline that's going to be very exciting. But yeah, it is. It's the simplicity. So, yeah, the expectations. I don't know if sometimes, you know, when we talk about the good old days and talk about physical mediumship, you know, there was a time you couldn't walk down Regent Street without somebody coming out on a chair of a window 4 stories up and flipping in the window next door, and you know, the full body ectoplasm of Aunt Nelly.
Yeah, I see where you're going with that one. I thought it was rather accident prone, but no, I get your point now.
But there was something really interesting said, and I think it may have been. Do you know what? It's gone. So forgive me, whoever it is that said this. And I just thought, wow, that really makes a lot of sense. We talk about those times when there was so much physical, and the follow-on is, why don't we see it now?
Yes.
Well, I was always of the mind of, well, do you know what? If I levitated tomorrow on the platform, next week the church will be full. People want to see me levitate again. The week after, you levitate again, and then they go, well, can you not spin round now? And from the spirit point of view, what are you achieving? And this is something I think we sometimes neglect to look at.
I've heard the same, to be honest, from the spirit world.
Yeah. What are they actually achieving? You can understand it where you've got small dedicated circles that sit week in, week out, showing their allegiance, you know, just giving all their energy, not for personal development. But somebody said something, and they said, well, don't forget at those times also the level of education was fairly low, that the greatest percentage of the population had left school at 12, 13, 14, whatever it was at that time, with a very basic education. And it's not being demeaning to people of the time. So the spirit world had to do something phenomenal to engage the attention of people. And the world has moved, and we are now in an era where every time we open the doors to a service, you're going to get people who've got degrees, people who've gone to universities, further education, whatever, who've got a very good level of understanding. So the mediumship has changed to suit this time, where we are engaging on that mental level, that mental mediumship, with facts and figures which are relatable. Because again, if you go back to turn of the century, a lot of people hadn't even been to London, let alone been abroad on holiday. Now, you know, a lot of the people have been all over the world. So we've got a totally different audience.
There is another point here, though, which is really interesting, which the spirit world actually raised in a trance discussion a few weeks ago, was if they gave us the meaning of life, how would that threaten our existence as an individual? What suddenly would we as an individual be exposed to? I mean, look what happened to Christ. Look what happened to the other great leaders. They were absolutely tormented. They were hounded. This information is on a need-to-know basis, and I agree. There are domains who know about this. There are groups of people who keep knowledge of this level safe, because the world isn't ready for it.
Yeah.
You know, we are ready for a lot, but we're not ready for certain types of information because of the threat and therefore the effect it would have on people's lives.
I've said a lot, that we need to trust and keep exploring our connection with the spirit world and our understanding of how the spirit world operates. I once said to my guy, I said, why do I never see where people are in the spirit world? And it just came back again, very simplistic statement, because that's their heaven and not yours, which made perfect sense to me. Because I'm a great believer we create that to which we go. But I've often said this in addresses. I said, if this, for example, this was solid proof that has been tested, you can touch, feel, taste, smell it, hold it, and that is conclusive proof that once we leave this world, we continue our existence, then all you've done actually is devalue the value of life for probably about 80% of the world's population.
Yeah.
If you had that I'm just using this as an example. So you've got something solid, something tactile. It's been, examined. Yeah, this is absolute proof. You can't deny it. That when your physical body goes, you continue living. And that comes into the public's awareness and the public understanding. 80% of people probably wouldn't be ready to assimilate that properly and just go, oh, I'm having such a shit day today. Do you know what? I'm just going to jump out the window because I know I'm going to carry on living.
Yes. But there's lots of things where we have been given tidbits of the truth. But a bit like the monkey sitting on our shoulder, we don't choose to hear it because it doesn't serve our purpose. I was thinking the other night, I have mentioned, I think, to you that I had a difficult relationship with my mother. And in fact, my husband said something the other day, and it was one of the first few times I've actually heard him say exactly how he felt about my mother, because he's always been very respectful of the relationship, and he was quite strong in the words that he used, in the condemnation, actually, in the words that he used when we were talking to friends. But I do wonder, we've had this very odd idea about purgatory and hell. And I was thinking, that must be my mother's purgatory, because I know that she's still around, and she has occasionally come back and only once said sorry, but usually there's lots of excuses. But she is in constant purgatory, knowing exactly what I think about her. Whereas when she was on this earth, if I didn't say it to her face, she would never have known and wouldn't have been aware of it. But for the spirit world to constantly be aware of the relationship that is still going on in front of them by people on this earth about them, I believe that is what purgatory is really all about.
Mm.
And if we were to understand that, then we probably would want to actually do more to not break down relationships in this life, because it's not out of sight, out of mind for those who believe, and even those who don't believe can still talk about the dead. But I wonder how the dead react to hearing what people still think about them.
Mm.
I know that's completely off topic, but it's something that came up, and how people then justify this if they then extend their understanding of, I will be in that position when I'm listening to my family talk about me, and it won't be very nice.
Yeah.
How am I going to equate that with how I live now?
Yeah.
No, would that make us behave better? Would that make us behave better?
I think, if we delve into the DSNU philosophies here with personal responsibility, that comes neatly under that gamut and that title. I have trouble with, again, another human frailty is we're either looking for somebody to blame or somebody to save us, when actually that person is the person in the mirror.
Gosh, yes.
So we tend to, you've used a very orthodox word there of purgatory. And
Yes.
that conjures up images of a place that you are sent to, and you have to endure that. So you're bringing in that essence of, this punishment of a way, and it's being forced upon you.
It's not.
Whereas in spiritualism, I know that I just sit there and I can work out where I may have gone wrong. But usually it's somebody else, so don't worry about that.
But when you're up there, how are you going to translate that to basically say, I'm sorry? Because that's,
I think it triggers off that inner journey.
Yeah.
Because, when we are dealing with ourselves, that's the one person we can't lie to.
No.
We can't. We may say whatever to anybody, but to ourselves, because we know, we've all done it, haven't we? Oh, I'm really sorry about that. But actually, you can hear that echo in the background of, no, you're not. You're just saying that.
Next time. I'll sort this out. Yeah.
You're just trying to appease somebody, a deity or something, by saying that. But you're not actually going through that process. And again, we're coming back here to earlier part of the conversation about the journey is the experience. And that journey doesn't stop because we've left this world behind. In fact, we probably have more access to that inner journey. How many times as working mediums have we brought through messages from people who want to say, I'm sorry?
Well, I was just about to say that. I mean, I always start the demonstrations off by saying, if somebody's come through for you don't wish to speak to, then acknowledge it and we'll move on, because this might be now the time of the place. But it's interesting for us to hear that this dynamic is so real that there will be these occasions when those from the spirit world do need to say, because they have no other access to that. You see, we think about the evidence, past evidence, don't we, that we're going to present, your gran had 3 children and she lived in a nice house with a picket fence, when in fact very often these days the messages we're getting from the spirit world is much more real time.
Yeah.
And but is the platform the place to explore that?
Yeah, that is always going to be
crossover.
A difficult one, and I've often said, do you want me to continue with this?
Yeah.
There was only one time I did actually slightly disregard the sitter because there was an element of they're trying to be cocky and take over, and I just thought, no, you don't. He come through, he wants to say you're sorry, I'm working for him and I'm leaving it with you, bye.
Yeah, I'm working with him. Yeah.
You're just trying to take over and be the star. Well, listen, love, they booked me, not you. Shut up. But again, we then sort of like delve down on that deeper thing, because again, funny enough, Roy's in the room tonight, and we were talking about this yesterday. There was issues with somebody about forgiveness with somebody, and I was trying to explain in a more earthly term, I do genuinely feel sorry for the genuine homeless. I do, I just think, oh my God, I'm going to go home tonight, kick me slippers off your bed.
Yeah.
You're going to lie there in whatever, subject to whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know your life story. Somebody loved you at one stage. You were somebody's kid at one stage, and whatever's gone on in your life has led to this. I've said in addresses about, if you can help, and I said, I know that if I say I gave a £5 to somebody the other day, which I will do if I'm able to, and people will automatically say, oh yeah, well they're only going to spend it on drugs, so they're cutting off. And I always say, this is a two-way. These energies are two ways. I give you £5 because I want to help you. I'm not going to put caveats on that. I'm not going to let what I think.
You don't get them to sign a contract. You don't get them to sign the contract when you're near the £5.
Exactly. What you do with it is your side of the bargain. And in time, we will revisit these energies. I will revisit that time of giving out of the energy of just giving to help, to assist. with no caveats on it. I just want, here, you're a fellow human being, take this, it might help you. That person is also going to go through a time of reflection and meeting up with these things again and going, yeah, people wanted to help me and I ended up, because of addictions and issues, going down that path. And it's the same when we talk, I think, with forgiveness side of it. If the spirit communicator can get that over to just say, I am truly sorry for what I've done, they've done their part of the equation.
Yeah. Doesn't have to be a long sermon.
That is their healing journey done.
It's how I explain it, yes.
How it's received is the recipient's.
Yeah. And very often it's messages like this that really bring a community together, because they can feel the emotion, the language. They can feel the sadness very often if they are so linked. And you have no idea what healing that can effect in other quarters. Even if they just realize, my goodness me, this is elevating that message into a philosophy. It's creating a different dynamic, because I now understand that the message is in real time. I mean, I've had a message from my father, which was about a legal situation I was in, and he gave me advice from the other side, which I followed up, which I then mentioned to my solicitor, and he said, yes, that's absolutely right. I mean, I didn't go into all the detail, and then somebody else said in the same situation that their solicitor had come up with exactly the same statement. I find that amazing. This isn't just somebody telling me, oh, your dad had 2 children and, he was a teacher and this. I don't need to know that information. I don't feel that information when I receive that from a medium. I feel this information, and I will never forget it, about he was there to support me, as he was always supporting me. I was always his little girl.
Yeah.
And other people can feel it when it's on that level. That's what the true message of spiritualism is all about. There are guardian angels that, they're always there to help. And Mum, I suppose, in her clumsy way, will continue to say, I'm sorry, but, and I'll go, yeah, Mum, right. Yeah, right, whatever.
Bringing that in and to wind up tonight, that comes back to the expectations versus the realization. Yeah. But you can only demonstrate and talk and know, because of your experience, what you've just said through that journey. Yes. And this is where we need to go. When we go back to the very basic, the beginning with people, we've got that knowledge, we've got that understanding. But if we were to give all of that, they would sit there going, yeah, I'm really not sure about this, or no, actually, that's not what I want to hear. So it's just coming back to and just being honest, being consistent with things, and offering the opportunity through discussion. We have a lot of discussion evenings now in church in place of the gems of mediumship, because to me there's more value in a presentation and a discussion than there is just beating out the message every 5 seconds of got your mother here and she loves you, got your mother here and she loves you.
Oh gosh, yes.
It gives people that opportunity, but that's not for everybody. And I did sit with my team and said, about this, and is this right? And they said, different people have different orthodoxies. If that's their orthodoxies, that's absolutely fine for them at this time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely. Anyway, darling, good idea. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it as always.
Yeah, it's good. Apologies. Sorry, Richard. Is he on the Xbox?
Oh, sorry, he's on the Xbox. He's fine. He's really happy. You mean I've got 2 hours on this? I said, yes, dear.
Lovely
conversation. We have discussions like this anyway, don't we? I mean, we've just had the luxury of doing it in front of people tonight, but we often have discussions like this. They get quite involved.
Yeah, and this is something that this new age that we're in now is showing us, because our journey as mediums used to be very lonely.
Yes. Yes.
I was taken out by one of our healers and his wife, and they left me in Weymouth. No, they didn't. I felt like an Amazon.
They left you to pay the bill.
I felt like an Amazon parcel. No. They said we'd like to go out and see another church. So there was an evening service on Weymouth, which was about 30 miles from here. And we went down and sat in the service, enjoyed it, and just different, it's so nice to sit there and thinking, I don't have to do anything. This is great. I was waiting then to hear that, the medium hadn't turned up. Lawrence. No, it didn't happen. So it was great. But at the end of the night, this couple live out in the countryside a bit, and the medium, who I knew, only lives up the road. So unbeknownst to me, the wife of the healer had a discussion with the medium. She came back and she said, "Oh, so-and-so's taking you home tonight." And I went, "Oh, great. Okay, so you've dumped me, have you? That's nice." Joking. But do you know what? Coming back in the car, I sat talking to her and I went, it's very lonely, isn't it, being a platform medium? Because there's like probably 45, 50-minute drive. It's nighttime, so it's in the dark. And you go down to take a service and you've got the anticipation, the excitement, and the bit of the fear factor, and please be there and please let it work. And then you're greeted, you go in, you're greeted, you're made to feel welcome, you're up there, and then once you hand over to spirit, it just all happens and everything. And then the end of the night comes, and it's a bit deflating. I just found it interesting to see that third party. Although I've done it myself, I've never acknowledged it in myself. It can be a very lonely journey being a medium.
But that doesn't happen online. That's it. It doesn't happen online in the same way. I mean, I would never believe we're in Cambridgeshire connecting with you down in Poole and this amazing co-presenting relationship we've had over. I had to be very specific about that. I don't want to give you a bad name, but co-presenting relationship we've had over the last year. It would never have been possible in the olden days, even pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And it is so convenient for mediums.
And it has opened up all these new channels of communication.
Yes.
As I said before we went live tonight, that I had a communication from a medium asking a question about something. And I just think, do you know what? That's great, because pre-2020, we just relied on our gut instinct, and maybe then it never gave it a thought either, or maybe thought it doesn't feel right, but I don't know why it doesn't feel right. But now,
but also it's allowed churches and centres to have a much greater pool of ability. Suddenly we're all international mediums. Yeah, I mean, it would be a title. You see? Hello, Jan. Go back to watch the video. Yes. Send us your comments, please. We'll always chat about them. Don't worry. Might be a topic for another conversation. But yes, suddenly this pool of mediums, and you're getting people coming online. I mean, the number of international mediums you have representing at Poole is just phenomenal. It wouldn't have happened before.
But again, because we're now communicating on a much deeper level, and it's great. Yeah. We will sit there and have conversations about things. If you get something come up and you just think, I'm struggling with this, I'm not quite sure about this. Yeah. Oh, Jack, what do you think about this? Or Frederick, what do you think about this? Or Susan, what do you think about this? And vice versa. You will get messages come through and they'll go, what do you think about this? And it's really empowering now for our movement, I think, that we have got these new levels of communication.
Yes, I think so.
That our journey of development is always a lone journey, but now we needn't be alone, if you get that.
Somebody asked on Thursday in the session, was it necessary to have qualifications? You remember that, didn't you? Mm. I was thinking about that it's important for the individual to continue their personal development and not think, I've got the title, it all stops when I've got the title. We've discussed that one in the past.
Yeah.
But also it allows mediums to, by seeing the work of other mediums, to really assess their own level of proficiency. And that is out of respect for the audiences and the congregations that they serve. So the congregations should expect more. That's part of the evolution, and you've tried to promote that. But the mediums have to keep up.
Yeah.
And that is probably a topic for another conversation, but that doesn't seem to be happening as much. And that may be because there isn't the it can't be satiated in a way.
We've got the Reverend Nick Brown. Development is eternal. Totally agree.
Yeah, it should be. It shouldn't be.
It is.
We are seeing mediums got the title.
Never be happy with our mediumship, and I don't mean constantly. Medium Roy McKay, never stop learning. So true. We should always be pushing our mediumship. We should always be going, yeah, that's really good, but I know we can do better.
Yeah.
We do it, don't we? We may deliver a message and we get the feedback after and we think, oh, God, why didn't I pick up on that?
Yes.
Why didn't I get that bit? Why didn't I say that? Why didn't I get this? And instead of being hard on ourselves, just saying, well, okay, let's get into this deeper state then. Watch our fellow mediums, see, how they operate. I picked up a wonderful tip off of somebody about standing still in my own power. And I was doing a physical dem, and I was doing my usual up and down all over the place, swinging across on the curtain rope. And I don't actually do that. Not far short of it. But anyway,
it was a different platform, wasn't it, Laurie?
Yeah, actually, it wasn't a church; it was a club. No, really. But halfway through, I remembered this conversation that I'd had with this guy, and I really respect him for his knowledge and his approach. And I went, all right, yeah, stand in my own power. And do you know what? It was like this sudden uplift in the energy. And I know, spirit will go probably overboard to go, yeah.
It wasn't leaking.
Yeah. But, in future, we're not going to go that far into it. You've still got to work your way up to it. But this is what's possible.
But this takes us back to exactly what we're talking about. That if we push our abilities and our boundaries and our levels of ability and show what's possible by this process, then we won't have a stagnant congregational audience.
Yeah.
Because we'll be leading that movement that shows what is possible, how we can connect, just how beautiful this relationship is with the spirit world. Because we can't rely on the same old, not just in the organization, but in what we present. And if we can, and unfortunately, we have seen that standards are not that good. We've seen it, but that's what audiences come to expect.
Yeah.
So really, we can't blame the congregation for making the same demands if we're not leading that movement to show, well, we've actually got the link, so therefore we should be pushing ourselves further. We should be showing what is possible and taking the lead from the spirit world. So complacency undermines a lot of the efforts that we see happening in churches.
Yeah. And interesting, you just said about the movement. Jason Goldsworthy, who was on with us a couple of weeks ago, he's coming back to do another talk, and it is about defining the movement that we should have within spiritualism, not the movement of spiritualism, but that continual unfoldment and progression there. Lovely Reverend Nick. How are you, Nick? I haven't seen you ages. And as a working medium, he says, I don't think I'm ever happy per se. I often take my mother with me to service and annoy her all the way home, dissecting the whole demo. That's really good, but don't do, and I did this, of only looking for the negative.
This is
turning negative into constructive.
Yeah, this is hinting a little bit of imposter syndrome. And, I'm not good enough. Yes, you are. You're absolutely good enough. And I can do better, but I am good enough. And as soon as you start putting it, that will absolutely affect your your relationship with spirit, and you know that negative thinking can really affect the level that you start at next time. So smack wrists on that one. Let it be. It's a bit like deja vu. No, not deja vu. The other one. It's a bit like when you go and dissect something, and when that moment's passed, if you could have done better, you would have done better. If you needed to do better, you would have done better. You did what was expected of you from the spirit world.
Yeah.
Because of the reaction you got. So I'm not going to let you be tough on yourself. It's not healthy. Is that right, Laurie? It's not healthy.
It is not healthy because you've got this sliding scale. You can either drift into the, oh, I missed this, or I didn't do that. Oh, bloody hell, I'll bug it down. I should have said this. And then you've got the opposing end of the scale, which we sometimes see on the platform. I am so brilliant. I'm so wonderful. If you can't understand the message, that's because you're an idiot, because what I'm giving is the truth from spirit. And you're just like, whoa, hello, earth calling. So it's just finding that middle ground.
Be kind to yourself. My message would always be kind to yourself.
Yeah. Hardest lesson in the world, love yourself, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really
and it's a tough job going on platform when you've had a long day and maybe you've missed a meal and you had a horrible journey. Just be kind to yourself.
Yeah. Anyway, that was wonderful.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed that.
No, thank you. And thoughts out to Ron, and hope your health improves.
And to other mediums at the moment who are not in good health. We've got several who are suffering with illnesses, and
I've never known so much illness going around.
Yeah.
Just phenomenal, the amount of illness that there is in our world. What have we got next week? We have, who do we have? Where are I? Oh, that's today. I totally missed. I've got my calendar up.
Yeah, I'll come back.
That's today. Next week, we have on Saturday night, our Lyceum, we have Yanis back with us. Yanis joined us over a year ago. He was just starting out on his journey, and he came down to Poole and took a service and took our Lyceum night. And I said, we must catch up in the future and just see, how we've changed and things. He runs Hitchin Spiritualist Church. So I'm really looking forward to that, just catching up with Yanis again, because he's a lovely guy, lovely, philosophy, and just be interesting to see how this year, because this has been his year of running the church, or at least on the committee. I'm not quite sure the position there, but also as a working medium, and now branching out into the online arena. So lots going on with him. It'd be good to catch up with him. And then the week after, we have Kerry McLeod and Phil Dykes with us for our Lyceum nights. So that'll be interesting, catch up with them. And of course, they are visiting us in person in Poole later on in the year. So, all good. But in the meantime, Angela, thank you for this evening. And thank you for giving me that little boot up the backside, because I'm just, when, it's great, isn't it? You wake up in the morning, 6:30, you come in, turn the computer on, the first thing is, I can't do this. And you just think, oh, God.
I could feel it. Yeah, I could feel it.
And no offense, Ron, if you're watching now or later on, absolutely no offense. I never have an issue if somebody has to counsel. I'm not, because you hear horror stories. Somebody counseled because they'd lost a close member of their family that morning, and the response was, "Well, that's very inconsiderate. We've been advertising you."
That's just that's not spiritual.
Oh, it's like, wow! So I never have an issue. If people counsel, there's a need. If you counsel 3 or 4 times on the road, then I'll probably may not come back to you for bookings, not banning you, but obviously there's something going on in your life where you need to sort out. You come back to me then in the future. But yeah. Nick Brown, we all need one at the backside from time to time. Yes, we do.
And you can guarantee that our friend here, Laurie, will give it to you. Do not worry.
And just picking up there, Nick, my guide is rollicking me all the time about it. I suppose for me, it's about doing the best for all. at the end of the day, if I was too hard on myself, I wouldn't keep going back. LOL. Yeah. Yeah. It's just getting that balance. And
Love yourself, and don't be too hard on yourself. Yep.
Do you know what? I think everything can come back to the law of balance.
Yeah.
Every time we have an issue or something's going on, there's always the law of balance involved somewhere when you dig down and pare away at the energies. Yes, I know, darling, and I love you too. Shut up.
I saw her in the background, actually. She took a very wide circle to come back to you. It's like, you won't notice me at the back of the church. And you sort
of anyway, thank you. Lovely night. Good discussion. I enjoyed that. I love it when it flows and it becomes self-producing. It works really well. So thank you. Have a lovely night and look forward to tomorrow.
Yes.
Your wonderful course on chairing.
Yes.
And
chairing and hosting. It's not always so formal as chairing, but certainly hosting as events to share good practice and the best bits and the bad bits and how we can find a way through difficult situations. And I'm sure everybody's got at least one that they ground their teeth at.
Well, like the chairperson sat there texting while you're halfway through the philosophy, and you're like, "Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Really?
Yeah. Hold on, I'm going to text you a message. You're not going to like it.
I'm going to ask you questions at the end of it, and if you don't get 10 out of 10, you're out of here."
But anyway, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. It's an area of belief system. Oh. And
then there's another one coming up on how well am I doing it, and look at the reflective practice, because we don't we're quite used to in work situations having our annual report, but how often do we actually sit down with ourselves as far as our mediumship, apart from saying that was a good night or a bad night, but really looking constructively at how we can assess our mediumship and work through what we what it shows up, rather than just saying that was a bad night or good night. So I think that's going to be a good workshop too, a bit later on.
Yeah, and you always know when you've had a good night and it's just flowed, because we have reference points going back, because that was part of the conversation very early on tonight about where are we? Do sitting down constructively looking at where we are. I did have a discussion. I just got a little bit heated, and I was typing out this message, and I thought, this person is never going to talk to me again. I did say, you need to look at where you're going to be in 3 and 5 years' time. Are you going to be content 30 years from now, sat on a bus with bingo wings, going to take yet another divine service where the disinterest of the congregation is only outweighed by the total dissatisfaction of the committee, but you're a name that they can put you in? And when it came out, I was just like, oh, God, that was a bit harsh. But I just think, do you know what, actually, yeah, it does make you think. It's great where we are. I love my bookings. I love working with spirit in whatever field we're in. But where are we going with that? And how am I doing?
And one point very quickly, it only takes one conversation with one person to completely change. I mean, a year ago, I would never have thought that I would have been taking the equivalent of a second year of an education degree and having mediumship as my specialist subject. I mean, 12, 14 months ago, that wasn't even in the equation. So we have to be ready for these opportunities that come up and not be frightened to take them. And us as mediums, if we can talk to the spirit world, nothing can faze us. Nothing can faze us.
If we take that miracle that we perform time and time again,
yes,
and apply that to our lives, then nothing should faze us.
Nothing.
And again, going out into the greater understanding that if you have that active knowledge through communications that life continues, then apply that to the life that you live in now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Teresa, where are you doing that, please? I think that's the reflective practices.
The reflective practice or the chairing one, Teresa? The chairing one's tomorrow. The reflective practice, it's all on the it's all on Pool's website, on their internet website.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in that one, just have a word with Laurie, and he'll give you my email address, amfoster44@gmail.com, and you can ask about that one. But we've got one coming up on spiritual assessments, and then there's a really exciting one coming up a bit later in the year too, which is still under wraps. Still under wraps.
That's going to be
very different.
Very interesting.
Yes.
Nick Brown's already got the bingo wing. So have I, darling.
Who hasn't? Well, I don't think we're harsh enough with our thoughts on the present and the future often enough. Reflective enough.
Yeah,
I think that's the problem. Some people don't think about them at all. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's very true. Yeah. The university. All right, I'll send you a message, Teresa, and we'll sort out what you're after, my darling. That'll be lovely. Yeah, but you're still great in a feather boa.
Oh, and I bet it's a gorgeous deep pink too. I can only see it. He's thinking about that when he's only got red ones in the wardrobe. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, brilliant night. Thank you. I started saying thank you and everything. The 8:30. It's now 10 to 9. So yes.
Take care, my darlings, and thank you.
Pink or purple?
Pink or purple? I prefer purple, really. I'm not really a pink person. I prefer the purple.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. As I say, next week we have the lovely Yanis back with us to catch up with him in his first year, really striding out into the world of spiritualism. And the following week we have Phil Dykes and Kerry McLeod will be talking with us. And as I say, they are also with us here in Poole physically later on in the year for workshops and taking our service. So anyway, everybody, have a lovely night. What's left of it. Sorry to keep you up all so late, but never mind.
No, we're not really, are we? We like gabbing too much.
Not in the slightest. So wish you all a pleasant, safe, wonderful night, and we look forward. Oh, don't forget, you can watch our service live tomorrow online. We've got Jamie Williamson with us.
Great medium.
And Jamie's really interesting, put so much work into his development over the last few years, and it's really nice to see that progression coming in there.
A very intelligent medium.
Yeah, it's really. Last time he was here, he didn't read his philosophy, and I know that was a biggie for him, and it was really good.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it was really good to see.
Because he had the structure.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, okay. Allow him his golden moment.
No, that was because he had it. No, well, it is a golden moment. Well, great achievement. Yeah.
Right. Come on, everybody. Thank you very much, everybody, and a very